Well, hey, folks, we all know the difference between right and wrong. But what is it in the decision making process that brings someone's inner thoughts forward to the point that they'll violate criminal laws? Let's talk about the Daybell case, where a few people heard voices, and those voices led them to commit criminal acts. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks for signing up and joining us tonight. I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe button and share us with your friends. And thanks again for all of your support. I think all of us face a host of choices each day in our lives. Amidst those choices and crossroads that we encounter, there exists this silent sentinel, something that's often overlooked yet profoundly influential. It's our conscience, that inner voice, the moral compass that nudges us toward what we perceive to be right and away from those things that we deem to be wrong. Our conscience serves as a vigilant guardian, so to speak, aiding us in navigating the complexities of ethical dilemmas. They guide our actions, hopefully toward virtuous pathways. When people do things that violate societal standards, they often do them under the cloak of darkness. I'd like you to think about some of the examples we're learning about in the Chad and Lori Daybell case, and specifically when they assigned levels of goodness or levels of evil on other people. They identified people like Charles Vallow as dark, Tammy Daybell as dark, JJ Vallow as dark, and Tylee Ryan. This ideology espoused by Chad Daybell was that dark spirits, once exorcised or cast out, would leave the body. And once they left the body, there was only one thing that could happen. The soul would be gone and the body would die. In testimony yesterday during the Chad Daybell triple murder trial up in Boise, Idaho, former cult member Zulema Pastanis testified that she had participated in these exorcisms, the casting out of evil spirits from people that had been identified as dark spirits, evil, by Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell. Soon after those castings were complete, each of the individuals mysteriously died. Now, Lori Daybell was convicted in her triple murder trial, and where it was proven that it wasn't religious voodoo that caused these deaths, it was acts of homicide. And the jury is, so to speak, out on whether Chad Daybell will also be found guilty. But he has something much more important at stake. He is facing the death penalty. Now, I've mentioned a number of times on network news channels that I believe that Lori and Chad Daybell, if they truly believed this zombie business that they were telling people about, would have been up on top of the rooftops after killing a zombie. They would have been shouting to the world that they had gotten rid of another evil zombie. Instead, they remained in hiding, and they refused to announce the locations or ties to any of the missing children or to the deaths of Charles Vallow and Tammy Daybell. Now, in my opinion, they were showing their guilt and their lack of empathy for the criminal acts that they were committing. They were involved in terribly difficult topics that we've been talking about here. And it makes me think when I think about guilt, to a comment made by Willard Galen, who said, guilt is the cousin to remorse. So they must not have cousins. I don't know. It is the emotion, he continued, that helps us to know our frailties. It is a guardian of our goodness. Now, I'd always heard that Sigmund Freud made the comment, guilt is the guardian of our goodness. I don't know. But reminding myself of this quote makes me reconsider a comment that I made just a minute ago, that hiding from their crimes was a signal of their guilt. Perhaps these two were beyond feeling at this point. I'd like your thoughts, and I hope you'll put them down below in regard to this.
Hey everybody, look who I'm hanging out with. And listen, I'm not attending choir practice, but I just wanted to tell you that you need to be watching Profiling Evil YouTube. Don't miss it. I'm telling you, there's something there for you every single time. I never miss. You shouldn't either.
But our conscience is a multifaceted aspect of our psychology. It encompasses this sense of morality that we each have, empathy, our self-awareness. I don't believe that the killers in this ongoing saga, and frankly, even the cult members who fell in line with their ideologies, were always criminals. But I do believe they abandoned societal standards. They abandoned what they knew to be true for this need they had for power, dominion, and control over others. Somehow, Chad and Lori Daybell made them feel like they were important and that they had a special mission and special protection for what they did. Frankly, it sickens me to hear Chad Daybell's, or this testimony about things that Chad Daybell said, where he espoused his near-death experiences and said that those gave him the right to an immediate connection with heavenly portals. It offends me as a human being that he successfully convinced so many people that he was privileged to have special inspiration or special rights and power, and that his followers allowed him to make decisions for him. I've been amazed by the testimony that suggests that people would go to him for direction on so many different things: where to live, what to do next, who to marry. I just don't get it. Now, our conscience is not merely a set of rules or principles imposed upon us by external forces, but our conscience helps us understand right and wrong. It's deeply ingrained within our being, and I believe it's deeply ingrained in everyone's being to know the difference between right and wrong. The difference is criminals choose to violate those societal standards. Now, psychologists will often describe this as the internalization of these societal norms, of our values, our ethical standards, the way in which we were brought up, our experiences, our cultural background, all of this. But with this, the cult members who followed Chad and Lori Daybell, as well as several other people who are going to remain nameless, but I think you'll know who they are, these self-perceived prophets and prophetesses were looked upon, and they looked upon Chad and Lori as their leaders. They abandoned everything they knew to be right for the promise of greatness, for the promise that they were someone special in the eyes of whoever the God is that these two believed in. Now, in her testimony yesterday, Zulema Pestena spoke about how she realized there was conflict between her mainstream religious upbringing and the teachings of Chad and Lori Daybell. Regardless, she chose to ignore the inner dialogue that she was having with herself, and she ignored this bad feeling that she had about what was being taught. You know, at its core, our consciousness manifests itself as an inner dialogue, a constant interplay that happens between our thoughts and our feelings and our judgments and emotions. When we're faced with these moral dilemmas in life, when we're faced with ethical decisions, this internal dialogue intensifies in normal people, presenting us with contrasting perspectives and urging us to, in our own mind, weigh out the consequences of our actions. I'm wondering, did anybody weigh out the consequences of murdering 2 children? Charles Vallow or Tammy Daybell. It's that conscience that whispers caution when we're contemplating straying from these principles. It reminds us of things that we celebrate, like integrity, but people choose to ignore that. And my question is, why did all these cult members who were following Chad and Lori Daybell abandon these simple, innate principles and choose to fall in line with the ideology of two people who were way off base? I was so surprised to see the information being socialized that Julie Rowe yesterday tried to break into the courtroom. Break-ins too firm of a word. I was concerned when Julie Rowe attempted to get into the courtroom, apparently in disguise. Now, Nate Eaton was socializing this and said that she was prevented from entering the courtroom. I'm thinking now, isn't she on the witness list? And if that's the case, wouldn't this be in a contempt of court? And I'm wondering, is the court going to do anything about this? Now, Eaton's text said that Rowe tried entering while wearing a disguise, including the Coors ball cap. I went online to her Facebook page and I found a photo of her wearing a Coors logoed hat. It was posted the same day that she apparently tried to enter the court. So I'm assuming it's the same hat that she was remembering. But what shocked me were the things that I saw next. Now, if you remember Julie Rowe, she leaned on Chad Daybell to publish some of her books. She also claims to have prophetic visions. Well, I went over to her TikTok page and I was shocked, alarmed at the videos that she has posted. There are dozens of these things just in the last couple of days. And if you want a creepy peek into somebody's postings, go check that out because it is really alarming. And again, to me, this is an example of how seemingly intelligent people, and I don't know Julie Rowe, but I would assume she was pretty intelligent to write and do other things, is swayed in their thinking. Or perhaps she was already swayed in her thinking before any of this happened. And I'm going to be really interested in what your thoughts are on this particular topic. But folks, when you put them down below, please be professional in your expressions. I want to hear your thoughts and concerns, but I want you to be professional. Now, to continue my thoughts on this idea of the conscience, one of the primary functions of our conscience is to act as a bulwark, so to speak, against immorality. It serves as a warning signal, alerting us to potential harm of our actions, the kind of harm that our actions might inflict upon other people. But instead, it appears that these cult members, under the direction of the Daybells and other self-proclaimed leaders in the group, convinced these weaker followers to do their bidding and participate in these fantasies that they had. They abandoned their empathy and they abandoned and ignored the humanity in others, turning away from compassion and kindness to this oneness, this singular feeling of greatness among them. Beyond mere avoidance of wrongdoing, our conscience also inspires us to cultivate virtue and lead a life that's aligned with our highest ideals. Our conscience encourages us to aspire toward excellence, to try to reach a higher plane, to foster traits such as honesty, integrity, to be altruistic. When we heed the counsel of our conscience, we not only uphold these ethical standards of society, but we also contribute to the betterment of society as a whole. When groups like this get together and they work in secret, they convince the members that they have a better way of enlightenment, they put everyone at risk. And it really worries me. And this is why I think I focus so much on cults and cult behavior. When people hit these moments of ethical quandary, our conscience serves as this trusted guide. Remember Freud, the guardian of our goodness. It helps us navigate the complexities of right and wrong. It prompts us to engage in moral reasoning. It prompts us to weigh out things and look at the competing interests and the principles that are at stake. And while the decisions we make may not always be the easiest, they might not always be straightforward, our conscience provides us with this moral compass that steers us toward the most ethical course of action. And I don't think I need to remind anybody, but murdering people is not the most ethical course of action. You know, I've been appearing a lot on court TV in regard to the Daybell trials, both during Lori's trial and now during Chad's. And my purpose throughout these appearances has been to try to help all of us understand and make sense of this dilemma of right and wrong and the decisions that are made by people who join cults. I spoke about this with Vinnie Politan on Court TV, and I thought we'd listen to some of those exchanges for a moment. So let's jump into that.
Bringing my special guest, a religious cult expert, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and the author of the book Deceived, Mike King, joining us. Mike, what an important witness, what an important day. But really, I guess what prosecutors are trying to do is take the jury inside of Chad Daybell's world and this so-called cult.
I'm with you, Vinny, and I love the fact that you brought out that these witnesses still need to be coached a little bit on what court is all about and how much you answer a question. I thought she did a great job. I thought she was a credible witness. Could you imagine getting sucked into something like this goofy ideology and then hopefully getting your mind cleared up, but having to go into a court of law with the world watching and tell everyone, I actually believed all this stuff, but now I can see a little clearer. And it's a great reminder to us of how seemingly intelligent people can get sucked into these cults if the cult leader finds them at the right moment, if the cult leader somehow gives them a sense of purpose, like you can change the weather or you can have visions on your own. And when they instill that kind of power and control for these people, they stick with it because it's fortifying them emotionally and gives them this sense of purpose and greatness. And boy, once a cult leader can get people to align with them, they can go anywhere. And in this case, if everything that we're learning is true, they did go everywhere. You know, our conscience plays such a crucial role in resolving the discomfort that arises when we have actions that are contradicting our value system. When faced with these inconsistencies between our beliefs and our behaviors, our conscience will compel us to realign our actions, to bring them back in line with our moral convictions, fostering greater congruence between our inner values and our outward conduct. This is when we see people who express remorse. I haven't seen one word of remorse in the Daybell case yet. But I wonder to myself often, how do these cult leaders convince people like a Zulema Pastenas to marry a guy like Alex Cox? Let's watch this exchange.
Now, another part of Zulema in her life is that she marries Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who is, I mean, from all the evidence that's coming out in this trial and in the first trial, he's like the hitman. He's the one taking people out. We know he took Charles Vallow out, but it seems like that is exactly where prosecutors have gone and are going. So how do you think the combination of those two factors, that she marries this guy, Lori's brother, the hitman?
I found a couple of things really interesting in today's testimony in regard to Alex Cox and Zulema. Number one is that she says in testimony, I only dated him 2 or 3 times before I married him. So this whirlwind romance, probably arranged, seems consistent with what we see with Melanie and I can't remember, Plasky, I think is the name, and please forgive me, but a short-term marriage, and then they're married. With Chad and Lori, a short-term period of time, and then they're married. So it's like these arranged things are happening. And then the other thing that I thought was so critical in regard to Alex is that she says, and she admits that she has some immunity, which really made me wonder, and I would love your thoughts, Vinny, but that he then says, hey, they're going to make me a fall guy. He's all but making the greatest admission I've ever heard. But then he said something that reminded me of another serial predator that I interviewed in prison, Vinny, who said to me, I'm either a prophet or I'm a criminal. And Alex said almost the same thing. I'm either doing what God told me to do or I'm in big trouble.
All right, Mike is going to stay with us. We've got more to go through. When we come back, we're going to take a tour of Lori Daybell's home. Is this the scene where JJ was murdered?
You know, in the tapestry of human consciousness, our conscience stands as a sentinel. It stands steadfast and unwavering in its commitment toward moral integrity. It's that guiding force that illuminates the pathway of righteousness. That pathway of righteousness amidst all the shadows of moral ambiguity. We all face decisions where we have a choice of right or wrong. And we can either respond to that devil on our shoulder that's evil, or we can respond to that angel that's saying, hey, take the higher road. We not only uphold these principles of justice and virtue, but most of us nurture the innate goodness within ourselves and each other. In my final segment on Court TV last night, we talked about the place where Lori Daybell was living with her two children, JJ and Tylee, and the place where Alex was bunking at a very crucial time. We spent some time going through this building with the real estate agent and police as they looked at a number of different things. And there were a couple of things that stood out to me that I wanted to share with you as you contemplate what it takes for these seemingly intelligent people to turn against everything they have and to turn into religious zealots. And in this case, killers.
Mike, your thoughts about walking through the home. Do you feel like you're walking through the scene of a murder?
You know, the thing that's so troubling to me, it's pretty clear to see which room was Alex's. It must be that Tylee and JJ were in a room together. Vinny, maybe that was because he trusted his sister so much. Maybe that was a source of comfort for him. I know the testimony is that JJ slept in his mom's room, but I would be surprised if there was that much nurturing going on. But the thing that really jumped out at me is I had flashbacks of walking through Charles Vallow's home, Vinny, and boxes and clothing were stashed in a similar way. Like these children were living out of a box or a small amount of clothing regardless. And then, you know, especially in Charles's home, we get to where Lori's clothes are and other things, and we see a massive amount of clothing. It just seemed really different from what I remember our kids' rooms looking like when they were growing up.
Mike, there was, as they were walking through the tour there was an image that was on the wall there. And I'm not, wonder if it has any significance, if you recognize it, does it have any meaning?
Yeah, I do recognize that, Vinny. It looks like one of the Latter-day Saint temples, which would go very well with this theme that they had, not only formerly Latter-day Saint members before they were excommunicated, but this idea that everything is ritually based, everything is a perversion of that mainstream belief system into the ideology that they were promoting. And so not shocking at all to see something like that and see it so well placed. And you think back to testimony that, for instance, Melanie Gibb gave when she talked about an image of Jesus Christ on top of a refrigerator or something that JJ reportedly knocked off. I think this religious or religiosity was probably thematic throughout the entire home. Well, my hope for myself and each of you is that we continue to heed that silent voice within us, that guardian of our goodness that guards our actions and shapes the legacy that we're going to leave behind. Think about the legacy of destruction left behind by Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow Daybell, Alex Cox, and those few others who I have not named, who may or may not be named as defendants later down the road. I keep being surprised by hearing more and more are getting these immunity agreements. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts, and I hope you'll take time to consider picking up my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. In my book, you're going to learn more about cult recruiting tactics and how they take normal folks and turn them into their own form of zombies. Hey, please consider donating to Profiling Evil. We're trying to make it easy right now, and for every $20 donation, you're going to get 4 cork Profiling Evil drink coasters, and you're going to get 4 Profiling Evil stickers, and we're going to throw in a Profiling Evil pen, and I'll ship it for free anywhere in the United States. So please consider making a $20 donation to the QR code above, or in the description area below you'll find the link. And watch for Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, please check out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. Hey, thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil, folks. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.